Hi, welcome to the Paper Snob. This is Tara. Today I am working on two hops and I am combining them into this one video. The first hop is the Iron Crafter Challenge that I hostess over on my Facebook community group. There will be a link below if you are wanting to join my Facebook community group and participate in any of these hops, or if you just want to do the challenge, you're welcome to do that as well. I have albums on the group where you can add your creations. The second hop is Mixed Media Mayhem, and we have a recipe, and I will post that up here in the corner for you so that you can see it, but we are to use acrylic paint, metallics, and stamps for our recipe for Mixed Media Mayhem. So I have pulled out stuff from my November counterfeit kit. I have these two acrylic paints, I have a stamp, and some product from my kit. I have these paper snips. I'm going to fussy cut the leaves for this layout and probably some of those phrases. There are scraps from my kit. I actually have not cut into my kit this month because I've been doing other things, but the scraps were items that I put into my kit because I had already dug into the collection that I added into this kit. I have a photo of my daughter holding her pumpkin, and I'm going to bring in a piece of white cardstock, and that light blue grid that you see that is a whole 12 by 12, I am not going to be using that. I changed my mind when I started creating, so that is not going to get used. That piece of paper is actually from the Counterfeit Kit Inspiration Kit this month. It is a Tracy Reed collection called Goldenrod, and that will be linked below as well. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp with this Rich Espresso metallic paint. I also forgot to mention the mystery item for Iron Crafter Challenge this month is sequins. I almost made a huge boo-boo and I had pulled out my Nuvo drops, which you can kind of see up there in the top right hand corner. I'm not going to use those. I realized about halfway through creating this layout that wasn't November's mystery challenge. It has been a long couple of months. My brain is not functioning. Hopefully it'll get better. So the stamp that I am using is from Hip Kit Club. I believe it is one of the fall stamps from 2023. I love this background stamp, and I love trying to play it with different mediums. Like I said, I am using this Rich Espresso metallic paint. It is acrylic paint and meets one of the Mixed Media Mayhem prompts, so actually two because it's metallic and acrylic paint. So one of the techniques that I like to do when I am playing either with a die cut that I have created myself or cut with my Cameo is I like to do 3 of them and then stack them. And the reason that I do this is because it mimics thickers just a little bit. As you know, if you are a scrapbooker or have thickers in your stash, they come in a variety of sizes and textures. You can get fabric, you can get chipboard, you can get foam. I've seen like faux leather, wood grain, etc. And I love to try to mimic this when I create a title out of regular cardstock by stacking a set of 3 on top of one another. And so that is what I'm doing here. I'm just gluing them together. You stack them up, you get kind of that dimension that you would get with thickers, but you can control how thick you want it. You could make it thicker by doing 4 or 5. I usually just stick with 3, but sometimes 2 is great as well. So the next step I'm going to be doing is I have some of that gold metallic paint over on my paint palette, and I'm going to use a brush, and I'm going to kind of make an ombre effect with this title. I'm just going to kind of brush that along the bottom part of my title and get a little bit more of that metallic there that is so rich and beautiful. This is a Prima paint, and it is absolutely stunning in person. I bet it would be fun to play with other mediums, like you could paint chipboard or other things with it, but it's just absolutely stunning. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is I have this set of thickers that a friend of mine gifted me. She decided she didn't really care for the font. I love thickers, and I've had this font before. I feel like they might have been orange. They're long gone though. This is an older font, but I really like it. And it's a rather large font as well, which means that it's kind of hard to use if you have a larger title. But for shorter words, and beauty is short-ish, it works great. And it's a great way to get two distinct fonts onto your layout by using a smaller font and a larger font. And that is all that I'm going to do with this. I'm going to set it aside and let it dry. So I had that dusty blue scrap in my counterfeit kit, and I used the same set of dies that I got the word autumn from. It has a long line scalloped rectangle on it, inverted scalloped rectangle, and I decided to go ahead and cut one of that, and I'm brushing some of this paint along the edges of it as well. In the end, you really can't tell that it's blue really underneath unless you look at the close-ups, but I just wanted to get a little bit more of that gold paint on here, and I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna let it dry before I continue on creating this layout. But I just wanted to kind of show this process as well. I'm not doing anything specific. I'm just playing for the most part, and I'm pretty happy with the way that that one turned out. So you can see the completed frame off to the right hand side. You can see the blue peeking out from underneath that gold, but there really is quite a lot of the gold metallic paint, so it's not going to be as blue as I initially intended, but that's okay. I just did it for an additional bit of metallic color. So my next step is to fussy cut these two stamped images out. I am not going to be doing a real detailed job of fussy cutting this. It's not going to be perfect. And the reason for that is because I'm basically using it as a layering piece and a base for my title on the layout. So things are going to be peeking out. I'm going to layer them up, and I just don't think it's necessary for me to do a super detailed fussy cut. I'm going to go ahead and cut out the rest of the fussy cutting because it takes quite a while, and you've got the idea here. All right, so now that I've got the fussy cutting completely done, I'm going to go ahead and push all of this stuff out of the way, and we're going to work on building the actual layout. So I have these two pieces of 10 by 10 scraps in my counterfeit kit. I'm actually only going to use one of the two. I put both of them in for this video because I wasn't sure where I was going. But what I decided to do is I decided to make frames out of one of the squares. So I'm just going to tuck it in the trimmer an inch, and I'm going to trim between the 1 and the 9 inch on all four sides, and that way I am gutting the paper and making a frame. And then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to do the same thing with this one. That was just me verifying my measurements, and I don't know if you can see it on camera. I goofed, and instead of doing 1 inch on one of the sides, I did 3/4 of an inch, and so I had to kind of guess around a little bit when I was cutting my frame. So I end up with a frame that's not quite even, but it's not that noticeable either, and so it's kind of the same concept. I'm gutting the paper, and then I'm going to use my scissors to finish pulling it out. The piece in the middle I'll put back into my kit as a scrap, and I'll use it another day. The next thing I'm going to be doing with those is I am going to go ahead and hand stitch around the edges of those two frames. So I have these leaves, and you can see here that I started the process of fussy cutting them, and I'm going to do all of the leaves. I'm going to fussy cut those. I'm going to cut out all of the strips of paper. So as you can see here, I have hand stitched around that frame. I did it on the other one. You can see that over there on the right hand side. This frame is not glued down, and what I'm doing is I am just kind of verifying where it's going to be, and I am going to do some stenciling in some of the empty places on that white cardstock. And then once I get the two frames and my stamped images glued down, I'm going to add some splatters as well. So I'm not stenciling this entire background. I'm just putting stenciling where things are not going to be sitting. And I'm using, I believe it was sponge sugar is what I used to stencil that with. Now you can see I'm gluing down the frame. And when I have stitched on an item like this that I didn't stitch through several layers of paper, I put the glue on the threads. And the reason that I do that is because the threads provide a little bit of lump and bump, and you want to make sure that it glues down. So I just use the wet glue along the threads, and I don't have to worry about anything popping off. I do it again for the second frame. And again, it is to keep it, it is to allow it to actually glue down. So this is the way that I decided to use the frames to frame my image or my photo and my embellishments. And then I'm making kind of an L design with my stamped images. Those are going to be kind of tucked underneath my photo and title, but also provide a little bit of a base for my title. And so I'm going to move everything off to the side because I'm going to use this Distress Oxide ink that I used to stencil with. And I'm going to go ahead and do some splatters with it. So I didn't have my little mat handy. It was on the other side of the room. So I just grabbed a piece of packaging and I'm going to be just using that to splatter. These are going to be very light splatters. They're not going to show up super well on here, but I do like the idea of having the splatters along the edges and on the frames just to give a little bit more of a mixed media feel. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add pull out my Scorched Timber Distress Oxide spray, and I'm going to use that to create some splatters as well. If you will notice, it's not even opened. I purchased it when it first came out, and I haven't even opened it yet. So this is the first time I'm using this Distress Oxide sprays. I've got to take the plastic off of it. I'm going to shake it up a little bit. I'm going to get my very well used stick. It is a cuticle stick that I have never used on my hands or feet. I've only used it for splatters, and it is very, very colorful. If you could see it in person, it is covered with the different inks. So I allowed my background to dry a little bit. I put some foam adhesive on the back of my photo to give it a little bit of lift, and now I'm going to go ahead and start embellishing things. I cut a tag out of that strip of tags that I had, and I tied a bow with some twine, and I'm just going to use that glue dot to put that bow on top of my tag. That's where I'm going to journal, and the journaling is going to be sideways. It's not going to be straight up and down, but that's fine. Now I'm adding my title down at the bottom. I like to put my title down almost first to make sure that I have left room for my title. That way I don't get too carried away with embellishments. And so I went ahead and put the pumpkins on. Those pumpkins came from that Fancy Pants set of ephemera that I had in my counterfeit kit. I believe it is Emery Lane is the collection it came from. I really like the ephemera from that collection, the paper not so much. I fussy cut those leaves, and I fussy cut the truck from that paper snips, as well as cut down all of the various phrases. And then I chose 3 phrases that I had cut down, and those are all 3 going to end up on my layout. I will have basically a visual triangle of phrases with my embellishment clusters. I'm going to use 3 of those little buttons. I believe those buttons came from either Freckled Fawn or Elle Studio. I'm leaning more towards the Freckled Fawn. They're really old, and I've been packing them around in various places for my kits, and so it's great to get those used up. I have now adhered all of my embellishments to my layout, and I'm ready to add sequins. So I pulled a sequin button bead mix that I got when I was a design team member for Buttons Galore and More. I have a ton of their embellishment sequin mixes, and so it's nice to be able to pull them out and use them. This one is probably a spring mix. It's got some mint green and some pink and some light peach and even clear sequins in it. And so I'm just kind of using those here and there to put onto the layout, just kind of using them in the same way that I would use enamel dots in my embellishment clusters. So I don't know if you noticed, I had a little bit of trouble with my jewel picker. For whatever reason, it's not wanting to pick up the jewels today. I thought maybe the tip was dirty or something, but it was perfectly clean. It's not worn out, so I don't want to switch it out for a new one yet. All right, I got my layout completely finished. I'm quite happy with the way that this turned out. I did glue down all of my sequins with some white wet glue, and it will dry clear, but right now it is currently very, very wet, and it will dry clear, I promise. Also, I used some foam adhesive in various places. There's foam adhesive behind the photo, so this pumpkin is actually glued flat onto it, but I did pop Happy Days up on there with foam adhesive, as well as this has foam and this has foam. I did use 3 of those little buttons that I've had floating around in my fall stash for quite a while. For the leaves, I did not use foam adhesive. I glued just the very tip, like right here. And then when I put it under there, I flipped it up like that. And so that way it gives you the illusion of additional texture and depth without the foam adhesive. So for the most part, I'm quite pleased with this layout. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you are new here, I would love to have you subscribe. Just click that button down below. At the very least, please give me a thumbs up, because that lets YouTube know that you like my content and want to keep seeing it. Also helps push out their algorithms a little bit and gets my content pushed out a little bit more than it normally would. Make sure that you check that description box below for the list of Instagram creators and the playlist for the YouTube creators. And I also list each YouTube channel below in the link list, so you can visit their channels. Please find somebody that you don't already subscribe to and subscribe to them. Make their day. We all enjoy getting new subscribers. We're all trying to build our channels, and I would love to help you or help my friends do that a little bit. Ditto with Instagram. A lot of those ladies are working really hard showing off their beautiful creations. Please check out that link list and go see some of the beautiful creations. You guys have a great rest of your day. Bye.